Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll wait just a few seconds. We still have some people logging in. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're doing a webinar of how to produce ADA Braille signage on your LogoJET printer. So a few housekeeping things. All the attendees, your microphones and web cameras, they will be disabled. This webinar is for you. We love questions. So anytime during the webinar, if you look in the upper right-hand side of your toolbar, you'll see a little question icon. You can post questions here. We'll be glad to try to get to any questions we can during the webinar. If for some reason we can't, we'll obviously reach out to you post-webinar and can discuss any of these with you. As well, post-webinar, a recorded link of the demonstration will be sent to all the attendees. A few other housekeeping, there will be several screen shares and views during the webinar. If you cursor your mouse in between the two windows, you can make them larger and smaller, where you can make a camera or a screen share larger or smaller just to make that easier. So today, we have myself. My name is Josh McNaughton. I'm the VP of Technical Solutions here at LogoJET. And our presenter, we have Rob Lawrence, which is a Technical Support Manager. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Rob.
Everyone, welcome. So I'm going to show you how to print Braille on your LogoJET printer. So we're going to start with the source file in Flexi. What we have here is a pictogram.
Hey, Rob, can you share your full screen real quick on your software?
Don't have a... There we go. Got it. Okay.
There we go. Thank you.
There we go. So we have the base of a restroom sign. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the text and the Braille, and we're going to name it a spot color so the printer knows what to do with it. So it knows to print that layered print to get that build up. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit the text tool. I'm going to type out our message. Restroom. We want to adjust the size. So right now it's at 1 inch. I'm going to bring it down to 5/8 of an inch, because that's the smallest to be compliant, ADA compliant. And what you do from there is you go up to text, go over to the Braille tool, text to Braille. This is going to automatically add the Braille to the bottom. It's going to translate it, and it's going to add that 3/8 of an inch between the bottom of the text to the top of the Braille. From here, normally you would use grade 2 Braille. You could do the California standard or just ADA compliant. What we're going to do from here, yes?
So real quick here, I just want to pause real quick for everyone. So we are demonstrating as far as designing using Flexi, as Rob has started. I did want to mention on your top right toolbar, under the questions, you'll see a materials icon. I have added a lot of attachments in here. So if you don't have Flexi, the same process and same procedures also apply to Illustrator, CorelDRAW, and even Photoshop for that matter. As well as he mentioned, like talking about the grade 2 and the California standards. For the link to this webinar, we're primarily just going to discuss the how-to side of how to produce the files and get it to the printer. But I've also added a lot of materials in there where you can review all the Braille ADA standards, even the California standards separately, but those attachments are in there for you.
From here, we're going to, because we don't need this color, we're not going to print the color. The base of the sign is already blue. So we can remove the fill. And then from here, we still have our pictogram and our bar. So we want to add a spot color to that so the printer will know to raise the text. This will work for Corel or Adobe as long as you name the spot color Braille with a capital B. Cathari will know what to do with it when you import it. Same thing with the text here. Let me add an outline so we can see the size of the sign. And we're going to bring this over. We need a 1/4 inch from the bottom of the Braille to the bottom of the sign. And I have a grid set up on my workspace. That way, it'll snap to the grid, and it just makes it a little easier to align everything perfectly without having to go through the process of aligning horizontally and vertically. We can take this so we know the 2 boxes, that's a 1/4 inch because the grid is set up to be an 1/8 of an inch per box. So this is all compliant here. From here, all this stuff. Remove this outline because we don't want this to print. But we do want it to be a bounding box so it knows the size of the sign. So it'll print pictogram and the text exactly where you want it. We'll need a stroke. I'll have to make it transparent. Not working for me. Okay. Then from here, we're going to export it. Export as a PDF. Restroom print. And from there, we can jump over to Cathari. And it's printing right now, but when you pull in this file, you can see exactly what it's set up. So you'll see the colors different. That's just because for Cathari, you're going to set the reference color. So that spot color in Flexi or Adobe, wherever you set it up, can really appear any color you want it to be. It's going to be translated differently when you bring it into the software. So the color doesn't matter here. It's going to be whatever you want it to be. From there, when you bring it into the layout, we'll have a Braille category and print environment set up for the printer. If you don't have one set up already, we can remote in and upload those for you. So we have a Braille environment and a clear Braille environment. You would start by clicking that. That'll open up your layout. You would drop your sign in. So being that it's a spot color, a lot of the times it doesn't show up, so it kind of looks like a blank space here. You could rotate it, adjust the spacing wherever you want to put the sign. 1/2 inch over, 1/2 inch up. And then you would send it to print, just like any other job.
So Rob, while you're in there, can you click on the printer settings just to show how that environment is handling the layers of the Braille?
Sure. So if you go to properties, so this screen here, most people don't adjust. There's usually no need to. But if you look, this Braille percentage here, what we're telling it is that Braille spot color. This is essentially the formula for that spot color. So we're telling it that every time it sees that spot color Braille, we want it to lay down 100% white and 100% clear on both channels. You could add the other colors in there too. Obviously, it won't be a nice clean white anymore. You'll have kind of like a, mixed color. You'll get more build up, but it doesn't look as good. From there, your layer selection. See, we have the Braille layers. So we have 6 layers of Braille right now with 1 layer of color. So it'll do 6 layers of 100% white and 100% clear that we set in the Braille channel. And then it'll cap it off with that one layer of color. So another thing we need to pay attention to is under the media tab, Braille, sometimes it's usually set to channel based, but you want to make sure it's not set to non-transparent region or anything else. So this is what tells it, once it sees that Braille spot color, that it's going to print that Braille layer. And for this print environment, we have it at 720 by 2400 with the large dot. So that'll lay down a little bit more ink to get a little more build up, make that thickness compliant. It's just about done here.
When this finishes up, Rob will bring up the job cost and the job time. While we're waiting on this in a few minutes, Rob, can you kind of talk about material selection and maybe the use of promoters and any applications such as that?
Yeah, so this is just Rollmark ADA alternative material. And for this, I would normally recommend putting an adhesion promoter. If you're using, which most people use, a cast acrylic, like a matte cast acrylic, it usually adheres very well. No need for the adhesion promoter. It usually doesn't make much of a difference. If you're using glossier materials, gloss acrylic, I would definitely recommend an adhesion promoter. So let's see, this is done. Here. It's got that build up there on the Braille, the text. And that, so one sign took just under 12 minutes to print. Granted, if you had this sign laid out 3 across, it would be, not much longer than that. So the cost is $1.04 per sign.
Thank you. And today we are demonstrating on the UVX90i. I know many of the attendees have LogoJET printers. The same principles that we're discussing, it also applies to the R series. The only thing different, the layers and or the resolution could vary slightly, but the exact same workflow as far as the spot and using the Braille channels applies.
Okay. So what we have next, we're going to use our clear Braille environment. So what we have here is we back printed. It's just like a little keypad you would see on like an ATM or something similar. So we're going to print clear Braille dots on all the numbers to translate the number that you'd be seeing. So what we're going to do is go to new layout, Braille category, and then clear Braille. And we have this file set up here. So we do want to make sure the orientation is correct. Let me zoom in so I could see it a little clearer. All right. Lay this out here. All right, so the orientation is right. So I'll show you this print environment settings in here. So we have that Braille channel set up, but since we only want those dots to be clear, we don't want any color behind them. It's just going to be 100% clear on both channels. This is set up to be clear. Okay, channel base. Okay, so it's going to be 6 layers. We're going to increase the resolution for the clear because we do want to lay down a little more ink. It doesn't have that white ink, that thick white ink to help build it up. So we do want to slow it down a bit just to get a little more ink laid down. Same thing, large dot. We want to lay down as much ink as possible. Okay. This is actually set up as a clear spot color. Let me set the auto height. Might have tripped the sensor. Let's see. There we go. Just click OK. Sometimes when you trip the sensor on the I-series, it just locks it up. You just click OK, and then you're back to normal. Let's bring the sensor over the material. Turn it off. Then we can print. So it's hard to tell, but it is printing a little slower. But you will get that ADA compliant buildup that you need, even with just the clear ink. We printed this office sign earlier. This was using the same print environment as the white sign that we just printed. Sorry, the blue sign. Only difference is we did that last layer of color on top. I could also show you the process for that because due to the buildup, you usually have to add a bit of an outline to the color layer. That way you don't see any type of white outline from the buildup of the ink. So you kind of want that color layer to more so encapsulate the white layer. So you have to add that outline. So how we would do that is we have our Braille spot color file that we set up already. So what we can do, and every software is a little different, but with Flexi, it's a lot easier to work in layers. So we'll duplicate this layer. So now we have two of the same thing. Separate layers, same data. So we want to keep this spot color layer just the way it is. So we're going to turn off that layer. We don't want to make any changes there. So the color layer, you can name this color just for visual sake. Oh, got my caps lock on. And then we'll call this the Braille layer. Okay. So with the color layer, we could, let's say we wanted to make this, make it a red. We'll add that red to the fill. You also want to add the outline. So one issue that Flexi has, and Adobe and Corel might not be the same, but it won't add the outline to this text because of the Braille, because it's a text and it's not an outline or a curve. So what we want to do is want to go to arrange, and then we want to convert this to outlines, and that'll convert it to a shape, not an actual changeable text. And once you do that, then it'll allow you to add your outline. We can add our stroke. Usually 0.010 is sufficient. We want to change the color so it matches. Do that red. Okay. So now what we have is we have two separate layers, essentially two separate files. You can see if you zoom in, you do have that red outline. just a bit around the outside of the spot color. Now, last thing you want to do is for the spot color, you want to set it to overprint. And that way it's going to know, because this is all going to be exported as one file. And setting that overprint is going to make it so it knows that there's that color layer underneath the spot color. So it'll print both. We'll right click, go to overprint. We'll have our outlines. And we would export this as is. Restroom. Red. Okay. When you open this file, this is something that you don't normally see, but when you export a spot color, it'll ask you if you want to import the spot color as a spot color, or if you want to convert it to CMYK. If you uncheck this, it'll convert it to CMYK, which you don't want. So make sure you leave that checked. Click through this. And then it'll show up essentially the same as the other file did that was just white, but you'll be able to see that color layer underneath. And then once this is done, I could start printing that. Just about done on this one.
So one thing I wanted to mention for everyone joining as well, if you click on that materials icon, I've also added the 3 files that we're printing today in our demonstration. They're already set up with PDFs with these spot colors in there. You can print those as tests on your own machine. You can also open those within your design application just to get an understanding of how those spot colors were set up. You can open those PDFs in Illustrator, Corel, or Flexi if you have Flexi as well, and see how that's set up.
While we're waiting, we could talk a little bit about ADA compliance. So just a few things to note when you're setting up your file. Your text needs to be at the smallest 5/8 of an inch, at the maximum 2 inches. So that's easily set in Flexi. You do have to pay attention to the spacing between the bottom of the text and the top of the Braille. That needs to be 3/8 of an inch. Flexi will set that automatically. You'll have to do that separately in Adobe and Corel. And the last thing is, as I mentioned before, you need that 1/4 inch between any raised text and the border. And then your pictogram doesn't necessarily need to be raised, but it does need to be in its own essentially 6-inch square. So you can't have, something set up like this. It's just there's not enough space between the pictogram and the text. And then, so this is done. All right. So it might be a little hard to tell, but see those clear Braille dots. That's hard to focus.
Yep, we can see them good there.
Okay, perfect.
So that's one thing on the software, as Rob is demonstrating. Obviously, at Flexi, or if you have Braille fonts in Adobe, it'll do similar, but it's automatically doing those conversions, and the size of those dots are set by that font. And then Flexi, as he's showing, you can alternate from grade 1 to grade 2 and uppercase, lowercase. There's a few options in there. Now, the height of that dot, as Rob was demonstrating, that is defined by the layers and/or the resolution that you're choosing on your printer. Every printer model can be a little bit different, just depending on the ink configuration and the channel configuration on the print heads. But it is advised anytime once you first start doing this, let's say if you print 7 layers of Braille, get a digital caliper, mic that material and mic that Braille height just to make sure you're within that compliancy range.
I'm going to load up this blue material again. And we're going to print that red restroom file that we just set up. Our material down, auto height. Clear this. So we do want to change our print environment back to the regular Braille. And we have this file set up for us right here. Rotate 180 degrees. Look at our print environment. We have our, so again, we have our 100% white, 100% clear for our Braille channel. We have 6 layers of Braille, and then the last layer is going to be color. Have our channel-based Braille. Good to go.
That one's printing, Rob. Can you share the print time and cost of the clear Braille panel you printed previously?
Yes. Let's go to our print history. So that one only cost 2 cents. And that's just for the clear, that's for the clear Braille. The image on the other side, maybe, I'm sure that costs maybe a penny, if that. So that doesn't seem like much, and it's not a lot. As you start getting into the larger sizes, obviously you're laying down a lot more ink. As I mentioned before, this one restroom sign, this is a 6x9. Got 5/8 of an inch text and a 3-inch pictogram, and that was just over $1. So still barely anything to consider price-wise, but the more you print, obviously, more ink, and it does add up. As we're printing this, we'll start to see the red start to print on the Braille.
Rob, can you discuss a little bit as far as importance of printer maintenance and let's say like even bidirectional alignments when printing Braille, or obviously to get that texture and the quality to build very good. Obviously the printhead nozzles need to be firing at 100%, and also the bidirectional alignment needs to be very good.
Yep, the bidirectional alignment needs to be perfect. You can't even print raised unidirectional because it will end up in a lopsided print, especially the Braille. You do want that bidirectional set perfectly. That way, it's you don't get it like a double print. You want your material thickness to be consistent, because if you're printing, especially with cast acrylic, there can be quite a variance from one side of the sheet to the other. So sometimes it can be close to a 1/16 of an inch. So you will sometimes start to see, you're double printing on the Braille. So just make sure you get a good quality acrylic, and if it's not, make sure you're checking your thickness on all your sheets as you're laying them down, because you don't want too much of a variance, because you might see a difference in the quality when you're printing the Braille. You want to make sure your nozzle checks are good. Everything's firing as it should, because with how much ink that you're laying down, you do want to make sure everything's firing at 100%, because otherwise you won't get that buildup that you're looking for to be compliant. You can see it's starting to print the red now. and it's hard to tell, but the red is right around the outside of the text, so you can't see any white peeking out. It's aligned perfectly, which is another thing. Your printhead alignment really needs to be spot on. That way, when you're printing the color layer over the raised text, you don't see white anywhere. It looks almost like an ADA applique is what you're going for.
Rob, let's say a customer, if they're doing Braille their first try, they haven't tried these applications yet. What are some of the most common questions they call into tech support, or maybe common issues they have if they've never tried this before?
So usually, I mean, I would say 9 times out of 10, it's a file setup issue because it can be a little complicated, especially a lot of people don't know how to set up spot colors, which is necessary. The setting up the overprint can be a little tricky sometimes, so you really got to get your file right. Another issue is setting up the print environment to print correctly, the correct amount of layers. Sometimes the Braille output is set to non-transparent layer or something different, and it's just not outputting properly. And then other times it's just not enough layers. You need more of a buildup. The 40Rs and the 45Is, they need a few more layers than the 90Is do because there's only one print head. So sometimes you can't really get that buildup unless you put the full 8 layers. And then your nozzle check. If your maintenance isn't spot on and you're not getting that perfect nozzle check every day, sometimes you just can't get that proper buildup, or you might even get some banding noticeable in the buildup layer as well.
So in each of these examples today, we're printing everything in a single job or one pass, other than the clear film that he showed where it had a back print or reverse print, and then we flipped it over and then printed the clear Braille. But Rob, is there any situations or applications where you would have to print these in 2 separate jobs back to back?
So if you were printing on the 40R, sometimes you may need the 8 layers of buildup and then followed up by the 1 layer of color. If you're printing color elsewhere in the image, so not just color for the buildup, if you're printing color, some sort of design or a company logo in the corner, sometimes it just doesn't make sense to slow down the print for the entire print just to get this little company logo up in the corner. Sometimes it's faster to just run that color print and then do your buildup and color layer because as the printer's running, it's going to print at the same speed, even just to lay down that 1 layer of color up the corner. So sometimes it just makes more sense to print it in 2 separate passes. For the sake of speed. Halfway done here. As I mentioned before, 10 minutes does seem like a long time for one sign, but a lot of that time is spent in the pass. So you could see the carriage needs to move much further past the material to hit it with that second lamp. So if you filled up the entire bed widthwise with signs, so this is taking, 10 minutes or so for the sign. If you add 2 or 3 more signs widthwise, it's really only going to add maybe another 2 to 3 minutes, and you get 4 times the amount of signs. So don't think of it as 10 minutes per sign, because it's when you're printing one, yes, but normally you're running 10, 20, hundreds of these at times.
While we're waiting on this to finish up, I'll share my screen for another moment. Just a few things I've included in here as well we'll discuss. But as we mentioned, as far as the ADA, the Braille dots themselves, that's going to be defined by Flexi and or the font that you're using in your design application. So you don't have to worry about the spacing or all that as long as it's got that grade 1, that grade 2, or the California standards that you have in there. As far as the height of that, again, that's defined by the printer and the rip and the layers and or the resolution that you're selecting that can vary. Um, as well on these standards, I've included as well in the attachments, and I've got some links on this presentation. And again, this will be shared post-webinar. There's basically federal standards for the ADA for all the design, and outside of even a design, that encompasses everything from how that sign is placed to the height from the floor. I mean, there's a lot of regulations and standards with all of that. Not necessarily pertaining to just print as we're discussing here today. Each state also has several of their own guidelines. For example, California has their own standards that they updated in 2022, and as well there's a Title 24 with some updates from July of 24 that's got even more standards and updates. So it is very critical. Software will do a lot of things in automation for you, but it is up to the designer to make sure and or the architect, if you're getting these designs supplied to you, that they're all adhering to the standards in your particular state or your application. As well today, if any of you are interested in a free trial of Flexi Designer, which we're showing today, I've got the link here. You can go to thinksai.com/LogoJET. And within here, you can get a 7-day free trial of the product. Flexi is a great software. Obviously, it came from more the sign shop space, but it's got a lot of really neat tools, especially for ADA and Braille that, as he showed, where it does the automatic conversions. You can do all the layering, you can do the spot colors, a lot of things that really just simplifies the process for a new designer. As well, if any of you have specific questions on Cathari, the RIP that we're using here, a lot of people aren't aware. If you click on the upper right-hand corner of your Cathari, this will let you access the user manual. There's a huge, it's almost a 700-page user manual. Anything you're unfamiliar with, for example, as the layers that we're mentioning, you can quickly do a Control F and a search, and you can find that within the manual. It'll give a very descriptive information and tutorial on each of those tools within there. If you have any other questions as far as from tech support from us, if you go to our website, you can click support. That obviously that gets you our email address and our phone numbers to contact us. As well, in the lower right-hand side of that screen, you'll see a customer portal. If you aren't a member of this, I highly recommend you join this. From this portal, we have information here as far as troubleshooting information, general knowledge, but we also have a lot of training videos, as well as the webinar video from the day will be posted here as well. But in here, this is a great tool where you can go in, you can brush up on things that you may not do every day, you may have forgotten, or if you want to learn new features, new applications, new tools, this is a great free tool that we offer to each of our customers.
This one just finished up. You can see it's got the red layer on there. No white peeking out because we added that outline. That sign, it took 11 minutes, so almost 12 minutes to print, and it cost $1.08.
I'll open the floor up. If any of you have any further questions, we'd be glad to answer them and get to them. I appreciate all the questions so far. Rob, is there any other, in your experience, really in just ADA in general, is there any tips or tricks or recommendations if anybody wants to start on this journey with these applications?
Yes, choose your material wisely. Especially a lot of clients are now looking for something a little nicer than just like your basic roll mark with your raised print. Having a UV printer, you can add designs, color designs. You could add anything to the print. Doesn't need to be just as basic ADA compliant sign. You could do a lot of you could mess with, you know, the raised text. Like the raised text doesn't necessarily have to be a separate color. The raised text can be clear as long as the message is somewhere else in the sign. There's just a lot of ways you can get around just your basic ADA compliant sign, which is what a lot of customers are looking for nowadays. Just make sure you get your height correct and you're within that compliance, and you know, make sure you're using your adhesion promoter on materials that are a little harder to adhere to. I would test everything before you print it, before you run larger jobs. Just do a few trial runs, make sure everything's adhering, nothing picks off, and everything is, your height is set. Because once you get that print environment set up and figure out if you need to use adhesion promoter, then you're good to run. Then you can run your 100 signs, 200 signs, what have you.
All right, yeah, thank you. Let's see, we got a question in here. So it's a good question. Rob, can you explain from John, how are we doming the Braille top while the rest is flat on top? Can you just kind of explain how that's happening, where obviously the pictograms are flat and the Braille is domed?
So the reason for that is actually the size of the Braille, and with it printing bidirectionally, it just happens to build up to that perfect dome. Now, if these Braille dots were much bigger, like say the head of the pictogram, it would flatten out. It just that ADA compliant size of the Braille just works out for a UV print, that it just domes it up perfectly, because as it's printing in both directions, it's building it up to it eventually, you know, caps out, and that cap out is at that 32nd of an inch.
Thank you. I noticed as well, so there's many printers in the market. When you're printing Braille, you have to change the head height a few times or set different jobs. With LogoJET devices, you're only setting that head height once in the beginning, correct?
Correct.
All right. I guess we got one other question from Brian. He was asking regarding the last sample print. Yes, this one likely is not ADA compliant just because the red and the blue is pretty close in colors. But yeah, we obviously just produced this for the demonstration. But again, every state and even federal guidelines, they're each a little bit different as far as the contrast of what colors you can use and not use. But generally, they do recommend a high contrasting color. But some of these, a lot of it, obviously every state can be a little bit different. And again, it is kind of up to the operator. This could be a situation where an architect could have designed that and said, I want everything red and blue. And it may not necessarily be compliant. So that is something you have to be aware of depending on where the artwork's coming from. Many of these, especially like if you're doing a large building, the architect's supplying all this artwork already pre-designed.
Yeah, so you do need that contrast in the color. You also need the backer material to be a satin or matte finish. You also need your raised text to also be a satin or matte finish, which happens naturally in the curing process. So there's nothing additional you need to do. Just print it as you normally would, and it does cure to that more matte satin finish.
All right, thank you for all the questions, everyone. Well, again, that wraps up our webinar. We appreciate you taking some time out of your day. And again, please check out the materials that I've loaded on this webinar. And again, there's the files there that we printed. You can pull those out and print those on your own and see how they're designed up. As well as I added several of the guidelines for the ADA specifications on there for you. If you have any further questions, you can reach out to us directly at support@logojet.com. You can also call support directly at 877-469-4575, option 2, and we'd be glad to assist you. So again, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.